Welcome to the Conservationist podcast, a Conservation Chat UK production. This is the place where we start the conversation about all things conservation and share them with our listeners. You can join in and interact with us using the hashtag conservationis and the hashtag conservationchatuk. Let's start the conversation.
Okay, so welcome to another Conservationist podcast. This week we've got a very special guest with us. I'd like to introduce Harry Wright, who's the CEO of the Conservation Project International. So if you can just give us a quick overview of the Conservation Project, Harry, that would be great.
Well, thank you very much, Stu, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. So yes, my name is Harry Wright. I'm the founder and CEO of the Conservation Project International. And our aim really is to break down the barriers of entry to conservation for people from all backgrounds and help to empower a new generation of future conservation leaders in the field.
Fantastic. I met you a few years ago for the first time, Harry, when you did a talk at another event I organised. I think that was 2016 now. God, it's gone quite quick. I was just wondering if since we met then, what sort of steps you've taken and where you've progressed with your project and organisation.
Yeah, sure. Well, that seems like a really long time ago now. Yeah, so it was, I think that was, you're right, about 4 years ago now. So since then, we've actually firstly incorporated as a charity, as a small charity. And we have really, since then, been working on building our conservation community of young conservationists and building our platform effectively to provide mentoring, networking, and viable employment opportunities for young conservationists. And the way we do that is through partnering with research projects around the world. So we work very closely on a blue shark project with Dr. Andrea Guyon, who I know you guys work with.
Yeah.
And we've had a number of our volunteers work with Andrea on that project, and that's still ongoing. We partnered with an amazing project in Ischia, which is off the Gulf of Naples in Italy, which is a cetacean research project. And a number of our volunteers have gone and spent up to 3 weeks with this research project where they've learned maritime skills, but also skills in cetacean research, bioacoustics, and identifying the 5 species of cetacean that they have there. And we also have helped support projects in the Maldives. We had a project in Kenya, which we worked with Oxford University and the Nazio Trust. So we've done quite a bit. We've also gone to Bonn in Germany in 2017 with 2 of our young conservationists. And then since then, really, we've really built a platform where young conservationists can write about conservation and share their own research and write a specific topic to raise awareness about conservation topic.
Yeah.
We've had over 200,000 views to our website, and we have about 40 articles now which have been written by young conservationists. So we've done quite a lot. We've just launched our new website 2 weeks ago.
You've done loads in that short space of time.
Yeah, I hope so. There's always a lot more to be done.
So tell us about your new website then. You were saying you've launched a new website.
We have, yeah. So we created it around 2 weeks ago now. It was pushed forward by one of our amazing volunteers called Sophie Locke, and she had really taken the lead on it and developed it through Wix. But it really provides a lot more of a cleaner approach and in terms of what we're trying to do and achieve. And it's a lot more cleaner, so it's looking great, yeah. And you can, if you go onto the website, you can see some of the new articles which we've written around COVID and conservation as well. So we've got a 4 new part series on that, and you can see some of the young conservationists who've actually written articles about their experience as well. So it's it's just a really great place for sharing ideas, and hopefully we will build out that platform where we will have networking, mentoring, and then viable employment opportunities as well, which will help source.
It all sounds amazing, and we'll put a link in for your website as well so people can just go straight to it. Obviously, you've mentioned lockdown and COVID and some of the articles you've been doing there, and you also sort of touched on employment and future opportunities. Do you think there's going to be a big impact on conservation and people getting involved in it, maybe as a job or as a career? Do you think there's going to be barriers, or do you reckon there's opportunities?
I think it's twofold, really. I think firstly, the effect that COVID has had on conservation research projects has been very detrimental. I think a lot of them are struggling to survive because their main source of revenue, which is from volunteering and people paying to come and basically volunteer and work for their projects, is really dried up because of the travel restrictions due to COVID. So I think a lot of conservation projects are really struggling, and as a sector as a whole, we need to address that. And the government, we should work with the government and try and get new funding streams to make sure that these projects survive. So it's a very tough time for conservation research programs, but when there's tough times, there's also opportunity. And I think the main opportunity now for young conservationists is to think about the future and to think about where the future jobs are going to be.
Yeah.
And what you talk about, like the Green New Deal, the Green Revolution, there will be new jobs hopefully opening in climate technology, in carbon capture, but also the transition from fossil fuels to a renewable future. And the way that the private sector is also taking on board climate and the environment through the Sustainable Development Goals offers another avenue for conservationists to actually help big corporates actually change their processes and become more sustainable as well.
Yeah,
so
I think so. I was just going to add to that and say, I think sort of unfortunate in a sense, but the world's crying out for conservationists now, because we're sort of like on a cliff edge of where things really, really need saving. So I know you're really passionate about getting young people involved, and I think now's the time that if you do ever want to look for a career working in the environment, conservation, nature, and so on, which crosses so many sectors, like you said, in terms of reducing the climate footprint and the sustainable goals, I think the economy needs to be geared towards that green economy and hopefully make lots of opportunity for like passionate individuals, especially young individuals as well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And also another thing which we're looking at the moment is how can we make conservation more diverse and inclusive? How can we create new opportunities that are open to everyone from every different background? And one of the ideas that we have is by forming partnerships with universities and corporate sponsors to basically fund new research or PhD positions, and opening those up to people which may not have thought about a career in conservation, for example, and make it much more inclusive. I think we're at a fundamental time at the moment where we really need to think about how we are supporting and empowering conservationists throughout the world internationally. I think there is a lack of support there for young people who want to pursue a career in conservation at a time it's the most detrimental probably in our entire history of saving biodiversity and saving nature. So that's kind of the direction we're going in, and providing that platform of support for young conservationists.
Yeah, I think it's great as well, especially with them writing articles and so forth for you, because if you think of conservation in a traditional sense, it was always very A-level biology geared, where I think now it's really, really changing in terms of creativity and use of social media and using the arts to engage people. I think it's so much more than just the science. It's about that communication and engaging with local people.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm blown away by how many of our young volunteers are using social media to raise awareness of different conservation initiatives. I think the ingenuity and the creativity that they're showing, which I think from my generation is we haven't really utilized that method as much as possibly we could have. So it's really great to see so many people passionate about these, especially in climate, with Greta and the movement she's built around the school strikes and things like that. So I think there is massive momentum to really hopefully do something and change the way things are.
Now, you just mentioned you've just set up as a small charity. How easy or how difficult did you find that? Were there any barriers? Was it a long slog to get there, or is it something quite straightforward which anyone can do straight away?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It is so the governance structure of setting up a new entity does take a lot of thought, and the main thought you have to think about is, you know, where is your funding going to come from? So if you go down the traditional like charity route and you receive charitable registration status, which we're hoping to have soon, it does open you up to a lot more grant funding and funding opportunities. So that's one way to go when you set up a new organisation. There are quite a lot of governance things you have to think about, conflict of interest policies, and how you structure your charity moving forward. So quite a lot to think about, but there are some really interesting, I mean, social entrepreneurship, for example, is a really interesting area which I'm passionate about, which is kind of a hybrid between a for-profit company and a charitable entity. And it's basically having a company with a social purpose, which is producing a profit, but is also reinvesting that profit back into the community or back into a specific purpose. And it's really great to see a lot of new entrepreneurs which are very much focused on climate and green initiatives that are creating amazing companies that are also creating employment positions for young conservationists and young environmentalists, and seeing, you know, how business can have a real positive impact in the world that we live in. So it's a really interesting time to actually think about setting up an organisation. But the main consideration is, and remains for us, is how do we find the funding to enable all of us to work on this full time?
Yeah, there are lots of challenges, but I think you've definitely come a long way just in a few years. So I think keep going, and I know you'll definitely get there. But I know you've got lots and lots of stuff going on at the moment, but where do you see the organisation progressing?
Yeah, I really see, you know, the biggest impact I think that we have is around creating this like community for young conservationists, where we have regular Zoom calls with around 30 of our volunteers now on our WhatsApp group, where we basically just sort of bounce off ideas. We're very good at networking, helping each other out. If someone is looking for a position at the WHO, for example, you know, we can put them in touch with someone we know who might be able to give them an introduction. And I think this mentoring, this networking part of what we do is really powerful. And that is something which I definitely want to build into the platform which we're creating. And then secondly, the area which I'm also really passionate about is how can we create those funded full-time employment positions for young conservationists? Because I do see that a lot of young conservationists are quite disheartened, you know, once they've done an undergrad or master's degree, they come out of that very passionate, very determined and enthusiastic about having a career in conservation. But, you know, the reality is, as you know, it's really difficult to find a full-time position in conservation. The funding is extremely competitive, and even the jobs in many leading NGOs are exceptionally competitive. So we're there to try and help people navigate their way through a successful career in conservation, and hopefully provide them with the confidence and the determination to really find the job which they're passionate about, and a job which offers a huge amount to humanity.
It's a really interesting point, actually, because you mentioned before about reaching people from different backgrounds and perhaps non-traditional backgrounds, where when you look at conservation, a lot of the time you need a lot of experience, and that experience comes at a cost, where you might be a passionate individual who can't afford them experiences. So I think it's fantastic what you're doing in terms of trying to engage with them people and provide opportunities to help build their CVs and sort of given that experience which organisations quite rightly demand and expect.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is still quite a privileged career profession to go into, and like you said, to get that research experience, you sometimes have to pay £2,000 or £3,000 to get 2 weeks experience working at a research project, and that is a great experience in itself, and the money you pay for that supports the research which that project is doing, but it is expensive. So one of the things we're also looking at is how can we create virtual opportunities for research projects, and basically if someone is kind enough to give their time or expertise, maybe 1 or 2 hours a week or 1 hour a month, to support virtually a research project, then that is another great avenue which they can build their experience and build to put on their CV. And a lot of research projects require virtual skills. So it might be marketing, social media, communications, PR, and a lot of people have those really great tech skills. So that's another way which we're hoping to give, if you talk about like internship positions, which may be non-paid, but we want to make them much more viable and much more inclusive. And that's one of the ways which you could do that, I think.
Now, we've mentioned conservation a lot, and obviously there's loads of things and threats facing the planet and biodiversity. What key areas do you think are essential that we tackle?
It's a really good question, and it's a very wide remit, isn't it, of major problems that we're facing, from climate change to biodiversity to human poverty. I think one of the areas and one of the fusions which we are beginning to see is nature-based solutions to the climate issue. So ways in which we can preserve vast areas of tropical rainforest, whether that's in the Congo Basin or the Amazon rainforest, for the benefit of not only for biodiversity, but for humanity and most importantly, the indigenous people which live in those areas. Because rainforests, obviously, as you know, can capture huge amounts of carbon. And that is one of our best natural barriers to climate change. And as many governments around the world now are leading on zero net targets. So for example, UK by 2050, creating and preserving natural areas is one of the best ways in which you can actually combat climate change. And I think, interestingly, you'll also see a lot of rewilding projects. So ways in which we can rewild agricultural land to regrow forests, reintroduce biodiversity species. We've seen in the UK, we've got the beaver, which has been reintroduced, hopefully, back to the UK, and other initiatives like that. So that's one really good way of focusing on, and where a lot of the time and attention is going towards. And then I also think, how can we utilize technology to also help preserve massive ecosystems, end wildlife trafficking, and use technology to help with the climate piece as well. So yeah, there's a lot of really interesting areas that we can focus on. It just requires leadership, I think, from both the private sector and the public sector. Yeah,
definitely. And if you were at an audience now of perhaps people just about to take their GCSEs and they say to you, what tips would you give me to get involved in conservation? What would your answer be?
I would still say get as much experience as you can. And one of the best ways which you can get experience is by using platforms like LinkedIn, connecting with people within conservation organizations, creating networks for yourself, perhaps even thinking about, is there one skill that you have? It might be digital media, social media, and seeing how you can utilize that for supporting conservation initiatives. A lot of the NGOs are looking for people who have comms experience, fundraising, social media skills. So thinking about different ways and which skills you can build in your own time and through your studies that might benefit a conservation project. But I really think, networking is such a key skill to have. And, what we do, we're really open to new people joining our community and making introductions to potential employers and helping young conservationists really navigate their way through what potential avenues there are there and how they might go about applying for that position.
Excellent. I think we're coming to the end, so thank you so much for joining us, Harry. But just before we stop, how can people reach you? So how can they find you through social media or through your website, and how can they get involved with the project?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find us at www.tcproject.co.uk, and we are on Instagram and Facebook at tcprojectint. And you're more than welcome to drop me an email. I think, Stu, if they maybe contact you, and then you can put me in touch, or you can email me as well. All the details are on the website. But yeah, we're really happy to speak to new conservationists and hear about new ideas. You know, we're all in this together, and the more we can collaborate and communicate with each other and create those new projects which can have the maximum impact, then you know that's really the way we want to go.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Harry.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much, Stu.
Thank you once again to Harry for joining us today. I hope you found it as interesting as I did. If you do like our content, please click subscribe on YouTube. We have lots of free content available, and just by clicking subscribe really helps us keep that content going. And we'll see you in the next one.